Welcome to DT Fae Podcast. I'm Kate.
I'm Elle.
And this is the debut episode of our Throne of Glass deep dive.
So excited!
I'm so excited.
If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We've been working on this for a while.
Here?
Yeah. And we are so excited.
We loved doing our Crescent City deep dive, but this is the main event. This is the piece de
resistance. As I ruin it. Piece de resistance.
That's what this is.
I'm so excited. So like with our Crescent City deep dive, this will be a chapter by chapter discussion of the full Throne of Glass series.
From book 1 all the way through Kingdom of Ash. So we're going to be here for a while.
Cannot wait. We're going to talk plot points, characters, themes, symbolism, theories, and connections to ACOTAR and Crescent City.
So while we're going to try not to spoil any of the other series, we are going to be making connections to the Maasverse. So we will be discussing Crescent City and ACOTAR. It's hard not to.
Yes.
And before we get into our book rec, we have to talk about Rebecca Yarros trolling us on Instagram. I don't know what's going on. Maybe by the time this is up on Tuesday, it'll already be solved. But she first of all, she changed her Instagram profile picture and it said chapter 3.
So did everybody that works with her.
Exactly. Well, except for like one person who maybe just forgot. But yeah, it's book 3 in the series, so like maybe that explains it. But the dragon silhouette is the one used in Fourth Wing, not Iron Flame. So like, does that mean something? And I looked at chapter 3 of Fourth Wing, and it talks about, you know, if Jack wants to kill me, he's going to have to get in line because Xaden, something like that. So I was like, are we worried about Xaden right now? But then, you know, and if you finished Iron Flame, you're like, uh-oh. But then she changed it again the next day, and it was like, it was a 2, but it was like the 20 had been scratched out, so it's chapter 22. So, but it had the dragon silhouette from Iron Flame. But chapter 22 from Iron Flame is like, I couldn't really see a significance there. So you're like, oh, it's a countdown, 3, 2, 1. And we're like getting a cover, I guess, because now she's changed it again and it's a 1, but she's scratched out one of the numbers, but like she has chapters 1, 2, and 3. So why didn't she just use those? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's a clue to like Violet's. I'm thinking about it way too much. About her like signet.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean,
well, she's got everybody waiting with bated breath.
Well, and she's trolling us. That's what this is. She's like, she's a Taylor Swift fan, and she's clearly like taking notes on trolling her fans. But I don't know. I'm excited, but also we have a while until the 3rd book comes out. So
you're really teasing us. So maybe she's going to give some hints.
Maybe.
I hope so.
We can actually get to your book rec now.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'll allow it.
So my book rec today is actually another trilogy from Jennifer L. Armentrout. I'm going to call her JLA for short. We love her. We've recommended plenty of her books before.
I think we've read all of her series.
I don't even know. Every time I find a new one, I'm totally surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I think we may have referenced this one in the past because it has to do with gargoyles.
Which is actually perfect for our Throne of Glass episode.
Yeah. So I don't know if I don't think we actually discussed the storyline itself. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting. Like all of her stories, a lot of the main characters are half human, half something else powerful and secret. And you're always like, oh my God, where is this going? So interesting. So the series also has a prequel trilogy that's in my TBR, and I didn't even know.
Which I think I read.
I think you may have.
Didn't I ask you about it?
Yeah, because some of the characters we meet in this trilogy, it's like their story.
Like it's a demon or a devil.
I think it's
Prince
of Hell. So I will wait and I will recommend that trilogy at another time because I have yet to read it and I'm excited to do so. So the series I'm recommending today is called The Harbinger.
As I can't say the word, well, sweetie.
The Harbinger series.
Harbinger?
Is it Harbinger?
Harbinger.
Okay.
Like a harbinger of something.
We all learned something. Harbinger, not Harbinger.
Wow, usually you're the one correcting me.
I don't know.
My Alabama public school
I don't know if I've ever heard the word said somewhere. Okay, well.
Like Harbinger of Doom.
Yeah, like I read it. I knew what the word is, but I've never heard it said, so that was my bad.
We're learning.
How embarrassing. So the Harbinger series, it's set in present day, but it's a world with demons and gargoyles. The gargoyles are actually shifters called wardens, and they protect the world from demons. So the human world does know that the wardens / gargoyle shifters exist, but they don't know that they're being protected from demons. And the reasoning has something to do with humans needing to act completely on free will and not temper their decisions out of fear of hell.
Mm-hmm.
So
that actually
wild.
makes more sense in the way we do things IRL.
So our female main character, Trinity, has grown up in a compound of wardens where they live and train. She's got a unique power that requires her to be protected at all times, and it's kept secret because the demons would love to get to her.
I can't remember her power. She can't see very well, right?
Yeah, so most of the wardens that are at the compound don't know her secret either, because there's a potential that, like, even though she is potentially a weapon for good, they might still turn on her because she's still a weapon. So everything about her is basically secret. They assume she's being raised there just because she's like an orphan or something. She is slowly going blind, but it's some of her other senses are getting stronger, and she's been training every day of her life to fight and protect herself. She also has unusual strength for a human. So there's a few things, like in the beginning of the series as you're reading, that are breaking out about her character that should be kept secret or shouldn't be seen. So she's suddenly very strong for just a human.
She's not like other girls.
They never are. But she also can see ghosts and spirits. So that's kept secret, although there are humans out there that can see ghosts, not to the extent that she can. And apparently ghosts and spirits are different. It actually leads to us meeting one of my favorite characters. JLA is so good about giving you like best friends. Like I still think
like
back.
Tink?
Yeah. The little Fae. This character is actually a ghost, and his name is Peanut, and he's actually a bit of a pervert.
I forgot.
He's kind of a peeping Tom, but like it's hilarious. Only okay because it's him.
Yeah.
So our story begins when wardens from another clan arrive at this training compound, and they've got news that there's something out there killing both demons and wardens. And one of these wardens is our male main character, Zane. And Trinity finds him both fascinating and probably the most annoying person she's ever met.
But sexy.
Naturally. The story really ignites when demons breach the compound and Trinity's secret comes to light. So Trinity and Zane have to work together to save her family and also potentially the world, because the supernatural war is brewing. I know. But like, I want to tell you about what she is. You do find out in the first book, but I don't want to like give a total spoiler. But eventually when she uses her power, you can kind of figure it out, because this white hot fire erupts from her around a sword.
I do remember now.
You're like, what can that be? She kills demons. Weird. But anyway, you guys can just wait and see. There is some good spice. I would say the spice grows with each book. The first book is a little bit like new adult, so it's not like full smut, but it grows like as the series grows.
I was primed for this because I grew up watching Gargoyles, the cartoon, and they were hot. So hot.
They are so ripped, those cartoon characters.
Not like the ones in the Hunchback, but like the cartoon.
Yeah, I forgot about that TV show. But
the one with the loincloth.
Hey,
nice.
Got it.
Well, I have been listening. Thanks for asking. I've been listening to A Court This Cruel and Lovely, and I'm not usually an audiobook girly, just because like my mind wanders. Like I know there's some people that don't even count audiobook as reading. I'm not one of those people. I can't. I get distracted really easily, but I needed something to listen to when I was like on my hot girl walks and runs. And I swear to God, I have listened to every podcast on Al Gore's internet. I like I've listened to all the true crime, all the like everything. And so I found this just on, if you have Spotify, you can listen to it on Spotify.
Oh, nice.
And it sucked me in, and now it's an incentive to exercise. Like I don't want to skip it because I want to listen, but I'm not letting myself listen unless I'm exercising.
Oh, so, nice.
Yeah, I'll give a full review once I'm totally done, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm very jaded when it comes to, I love this genre, but when I started it and it was like, oh, she's not like other girls. Of course she's not. He's grumpy. Of course he is. Like florals for spring, groundbreaking. But then around 40%, it turned, I went from like eye roll, he's grumpy, to like, he's so grumpy. Like I was into it. And then they got to an inn.
I'm sorry, was there one bed?
What do you think? How many beds do you think there was?
Okay. I think one of our listeners recommended this series before.
Did they?
And I have read it, but I actually I've read so many I've already forgotten, so you'll have to keep us updated. We'll rediscuss because I think I really liked it too. But
well, anything that starts with a core of this and this that isn't SJM,
we'll
I'm
fuck
like
with it.
eye roll. But it's real. And the world building is like the magic system and the politics and everything is actually really interesting so far.
Okay, yeah.
So,
I need a refresher on that book series.
Well, and if you guys have a book you'd like us to recommend, my DMs are always open. Slide right in at DT Fae Podcast. But let's fucking do this.
Oh my God, here we go. I'm so excited.
For those of you who are reading for the first time, God, I would give anything to go back and read it for the first time.
Sucked in rereading it even.
I know. I was like giddy. Like I kind of like turned back into like a teenage girl reading. I'm just
so good.
And so, yeah, quick background. Sarah began writing what would become Throne of Glass in 2002 when she was only 16.
Wow.
And just to put that in perspective, we all know what you were doing on the band bus at 16. I had not even had my first kiss, but I used a tampon for the first time when I was 16. And where did I put it?
Wow, I can't believe you're airing that.
I put it in my butt.
You guys could guess how that went.
So Sarah was creating an entire world, writing what would become a Throne of Glass, and I did not know my butthole from the other hole. So yeah, that's how amazing SJM is.
You know, some of us are on different timelines.
We're all on our own journey.
SJM was far ahead of some of us.
So far ahead.
A lot of us.
But we were reading the same books. Like, I was also reading Lord of the Rings. Why didn't that translate? But I couldn't even...
I don't think they talk about buttholes there, but,
I was so stressed about, like, my MySpace top 8.
Oh, my God.
The only thing I was writing was my away message on MSN, and she was writing this.
I know, my AOL, I was like, I'm choosing the font right now. God. Yeah, wildly different world.
Wildly different.
Sarah, we're on a first name basis. She started uploading chapters to Fiction Press, which I forgot about that.
Right. It's basically like a Wattpad or like an archive of our own.
So she was writing this kind of like as a blog.
Yeah.
Which is wild, where it all started and where it went. So Queen of Glass was loosely based on Cinderella, but instead of a damsel in distress, Sarah wrote the story of a damsel who will cause you distress. I love that.
I know. I love that. It's obvious she was inspired by fairy tales like Cinderella for Throne of Glass. You can see that throughout the story. Beauty and the Beast for ACOTAR. But she was also a big Lord of the Rings fangirl like we are. And you'll see that throughout the series too, like Lord of the Rings. And
it's the same for A Song of Ice and Fire. There's a lot of parallels.
There's a lot of parallels. And which, by the way, if you are a House of the Dragon fan, we break down and discuss episodes every Sunday, and we talk about like the differences to Fire and Blood, and we're having fun over there.
Yeah, Kate has read the book that's technically about House of the Dragon, so
it only took me like 5 years.
I'm sure it was a really small book, but it's really, really fun to listen to the podcast to get hyped for the episode that's going to air Sunday nights.
Well, that one is so interesting because it's a book, but it's written as like a history textbook.
Yeah, it's kind of like
it's not a story.
Some of the stories, though, are kind of like Us Weekly. Like, they're wildly, like, you're like, that's the most extreme version of the story there could be.
Well, and
they put it down like it's fact.
The Archmaester putting it together is pulling from all of these sources hundreds of years later that were scandalous, or some of them were other maesters. Some of them were just like people working in the courts and gossiping. And
word of mouth.
It's interesting. But I love the show, too. Like, if you haven't started watching, House of the Dragon is so well done. The acting is amazing. All of it's great.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
and things are about to really kick off.
Note.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can write fantasy and not be inspired by Tolkien, George R.R. Martin, and or Dune.
Everything kind of goes back to Dune.
I know. Well, because there's so many, when it comes to the world building, there's parallels you can't help but draw. Anyways, Sarah gained more and more fans, and she pulled her work from Fiction Press in 2008, and Bloomsbury acquired the renamed Throne of Glass in 2010.
The first book came out in 2012, and she continued to release them until 2018's Kingdom of Ash. And like, if you need to visualize a timeline, ACOTAR came out in 2015 and House of Earth and Blood in 2020. So she was working on all of this in the same timeline, which is just...
It's amazing. So there's going to be... which just gives me excitement for future ACOTAR and Crescent City books.
When are we going to get an ACOTAR announcement, though? I am feral. Like the way that she left us with the Azrael bonus chapter, and then also everything we got with Nesta and Az in Flame and Shadow.
Hopelessly waiting. Hopefully soon. So, okay, there's no prologue for Throne of Glass, but there is a map with an interesting story.
Sarah talked about it, I remember, on a live journal, and it's been deleted. I know there's so many like nostalgic parts of this. I don't know if it's been deleted or purged or whatever, but the map was actually made by a fan.
That's awesome.
Who started reading on Fiction Press and reached out to Sarah and was like, can I make the map for funsies and for free? And then she was eventually hired on to do the official map.
Oh, I love that.
I love that.
So she like took her with her. That's awesome.
I think that's really fun.
If you're looking at the map, we're starting our story at the Endovier Salt Mines, which is a slave camp in the northern portion of Adarlan on the border with Terracin between the Rune Mountain Range and Oakwald Forest.
The Rune Mountain Range.
I know. As soon as I read that, I was like, okay.
I wish that I had a map. Like, I wish that we had like a poster. If anybody has seen one on Etsy or
like
something
Vanna White
that I could, that I could point to, but there's not a ton of setup. It's not as much of like a lore information dump as like the first Crescent City, where you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's more of like a learn as you go with context. And that might be because Sarah had not totally mapped out the world when she started writing this. But we're going to, as we go, we'll talk about it. We're not going to skip too far ahead and be like, this is this until we get there.
Appreciate not over dumping things on me, because it's hard for me to retain when there's so much at once, and then I have to go back to like re-review. So I like the way that she gives it to us in pieces. And like, as you meet characters from different areas, you're like, oh, you kind of like pull things together.
Even just like in my reread, I'm now in the second book and I'm like, are we just now learning this?
Yeah.
Like there are certain things but I'm like, it makes sense in the story. We didn't need to know this.
I know when you read it before and you go back and you're like, oh, this is, you kind of like push all your information together. So to reread it, like as it happens, like, oh, okay.
It did age well too.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things, like if you gone back and watched like movies or read things and you're like, this is fucking terrible.
Yeah,
or, this is racist. Usually it's racist.
Yeah, there's so many things. But if you've been with us for a while, we're shit at pronunciation, aka Harbinger.
I did a couple things in school. I was praying. I was square dancing.
Oh my God, me too.
Did you square dance in school?
That was our PE class.
Right. So we are doing our best with our hillbilly educations. If we need to pick up some square dancing, we're like ready for that.
Know that
we're
for life.
Not as ready for pronouncing words.
Yes.
We're doing our best.
Yes.
So we are dropped down into the Endovier. I think that's how they say Endovier salt mines, where Celaena, and I know that I'm going to say Celaena. Celaena Sardothien.
You did great.
Dothian. It's Dothian, isn't it? You know who she is. Celaena.
I'm going to say it differently at different points. I'll do my best to also.
And she is Adarlan's most notorious assassin. Celaena has been enslaved for an entire year.
So the mines are where Adarlan. I don't know if it's Adarlan or Adarlan. Sorry.
Adarlan.
It is it. Okay. Sorry.
I'm sorry, guys. How many times have you read this? I've read it 3 times through.
I have read it. Like my sister has the audiobook, so I've heard them say it, but I'm so used to how I read it. That's what I should have done. I'm just so used to how I read it first, so I will do my best. We've talked before about how one of the characters is
Chaol,
not Cole.
I said Chaol,
not Chaol. So sorry, we'll do our best. The mines are where Adarlan's criminals pour latest conquests, and many more. Rebels from Elway, they're all sent there. And Elway is one of the last countries that's still fighting Adarlan's rule. If you're looking at the map, Elway is in the southeast peninsula of Aurelia.
Aurelia is the world as a whole, so that's like Midgard and Crescent City.
So while we're talking about it, Aurelia is comprised of the frozen wastes, the western wastes, the deserted land, Elway, Melisande.
I gave you all
Finn Harrow, Adarlan, Terracin, and the Dead Islands. That's a large area.
Yeah. And you don't have to remember all of that either. But back to the prisoners at the mines, they include those that were accused of trying to attempt magic. Not that they actually can anymore, because magic has straight up vanished from the kingdom.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you mean you're accusing me? Like, I can't.
It's not possible, but sure. I mean, like, even the word magic is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
But today is different for Celaena. I was about to say Selena. Sorry. Okay. Today is different for Celaena. Today, waiting for her outside of the mine were 6 guards and a hooded man.
Chaol Westfall, captain of the Royal Guard, has traveled all the way from the mines to the mines from Rifthold, the capital city, and his fit includes a tunic with the royal seal, which is a wyvern, and his sword, which has a pommel shaped like an eagle. A wyvern, by the way, is a type of mythical dragon, and it has 2 legs, 2 wings, and it sometimes has a pointed tail. And some people think that the Game of Thrones, dragons are actually wyverns, and they are, like if you're using that definition, but they actually aren't because there are wyverns that exist in that universe.
Oh, that are separate. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Dragons do exist elsewhere in the Maasverse too. Back to Celaena. She has a lot of bravado.
A lot of bravado.
She presents an unbothered and sassy front. I mean, she's already been there for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Do your worst. But there's fear when she hears who Chaol is.
But she calms herself using her mantra, I will not be afraid. And she uses that, she's been using that every day for the last year. For Crescent City readers, you might be reminded of Lihabas. My friends, what did she say? My friends are with me and I will not be afraid.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that.
It's such a parallel.
Mm-hmm.
Celaena was beautiful. She is beautiful, but being in the mines from sunrise until dusk has left her pale, dirty, and painfully thin. But underneath all of that grime, I mean, apparently she smells because the guys are rude and say that. But underneath all of that grime, she has golden hair and bright turquoise eyes with golden rings around the pupils.
Celaena is immediately sizing up Chaol as an opponent. You see she does that with everyone, but she does keep her cool and she is allowing them to lead her, which is the funny part is they think that they're confusing her when they're leading her around. And she's like, you're just giving me more of an opportunity to learn the way, but okay.
You know, and it's wild because in my mind, I had remembered her having a hood over her head, but I don't think they've hooded her. So, like,
he has a hood.
Yeah, he has a hood, but like she can see where she's going.
Right.
So you're not doing a great job at distracting her.
So she's scared on the inside, but she's keeping her cool. She's really only lost her temper once, which ended in a dead overseer.
Mm-hmm. And the reason she's scared is because of who Chaol is.
Mm-hmm.
Chaol doesn't underestimate her, though. He's all business and he's not taking any chances.
While Celaena is important enough to warrant an execution from the captain of the guard himself, it's not her death that she's being led to.
It's the crown prince of Adarlan, Dorian Haviliard.
I just get so giddy about Dorian.
I
love Dorian. I love the beginnings of their friendship, and it's very like teenage.
It's all very
romance.
Young and wholesome still,
right? And as Chaol bows, we get a glimpse of his features. The captain of the guards is not excessively handsome. If someone said that about me, I swear to God, it would be a 13th reason. Like the first time they look at you, she's not excessively pretty. So he's like,
thanks.
He's handsome, but he's just a guy. Like he's just normal looking,
yeah.
You know? But he is attractive in a rugged way. And he has golden brown eyes and close cropped chestnut hair. And he's young, like younger than you would think the captain of the guards would be.
Yeah, for such a prestigious position.
Celaena has no fucking clue what's going on, but she's like, if I'm on my way to the gallows, I'm not spending my time bowing to this pretty fuck in front of me.
Well, especially since he's the son of who put her there.
Mm-hmm.
I would be like, no. Enter Perrington, who grabs Celaena by the neck and throws her to the ground.
Duke Perrington is a big bitch with red thinning hair, black eyes, a stupid mustache that I just picture him twirling like a villain, and a bad attitude.
I don't quite comprehend why you'd force someone to bow when the purpose of the gesture is to display allegiance and respect. That's the first time we meet Dorian. It's obvious he's nothing like his father, the king, whose favorite activity is to force entire countries of people to kneel. Dorian
dismisses Perrington, and Celaena silently forces her humiliation down using her extensive training.
Training she began receiving at the age of 8 when the king of the assassins found her half dead on the banks of a frozen river and brought her to his keep. Dorian is sprawled across his throne, and he's gorgeous. He's very irreverent.
He has raven black hair. He's around 20 years old, so he's a baby. Has striking blue eyes, and he is achingly handsome.
achingly. Wow.
He asks how the best assassin, perhaps in the entire world, has found herself in the salt mines to begin with, where the average life expectancy is a month.
We get flashes of what landed her in the mines. She was betrayed by someone and she was captured, but it takes a while to get the full story.
She's very sassy, so she's sassing him like right off the bat. And I mean, to his credit and to her surprise, he's LOLing. Like, you know, you can't do that with most royals in these stories, but he's definitely like not like his dad. And he asked about the escape attempt that I guess Chaol had like filled him in that at one point she did try to escape.
Yeah, he just, I don't think, got enough information about it. 4 months after she arrived, Celaena attempted to escape.
But that's not even the best part. Like, as Chaol is telling the story, she's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Get it right.
Yeah. Give me the credit that's due. I love Celaena and Dorian's banter, too.
I know, because, well, Chaol is the grumpy. He's the grumpy part of this grumpy sunshine dynamic. But Dorian is like, well, tell me the best part.
They're like the same personality. We do love a grumpy sunshine dynamic, too. So Celaena is very excited to let him know that she killed her overseer in 23 centuries before they caught her a finger's tip from the wall.
Slaves typically only make it about 3 feet before they're shot. So it was basically, the way I read it is it was kind of an attempted suicide, like assisted suicide attempt.
She does say she didn't expect to make it. But they didn't kill her. Dorian's father ordered she be kept alive as long as possible to ensure maximum misery.
And that's when Dorian is done LOLing. He has pity in his eyes and he asks to see her scars.
Excuse me.
I know.
She has 3 large scars and some smaller ones, but the dresses can probably cover them.
She's like, the dresses?
Excuse me?
Celaena doesn't know what the fuck is going on, but she does know that this has been a test to see if she's physically and mentally sound. So there's something that they want from her, something they want badly enough to travel all the way here from the capital.
Dorian has a proposition for her.
It doesn't even matter what it is. Like, he could say anything, and if it's getting her beyond these walls, like maybe even close enough to the king to kill him, she is all in.
Despite the dirt, Dorian's eyes are lingering. And, quote, don't you think it's risky to be this bold with me when your freedom is on the line?
Her freedom being even an option is the last thing that Celaena expected to hear. Like, she has been in the mines expecting to die this entire time. Like, there was no hope.
At the sound of the word, she sees She sees a land of pine and snow.
Pine and snow.
I know. Sun-bleached cliffs and white-capped seas, a land that she had forgotten.
Pine and snow is a little foreshadowing, but you can call us Hillary and Haley Duff because our lips were sealed. And that was, what was it, the Go-Go's? Anyway, our lips are sealed.
The king is looking for a champion, and Celaena is LOLing until Chaol's like, shut up, and you can hear the rest.
This is their relationship for like most of the book, BTW. It's like, if you'd shut up, you would know what was going on. She's getting on his nerves, and it's mostly on purpose.
I mean, Chaol is very serious. You can't help but poke at him a little bit.
He's a very serious guy.
The king is looking for someone to help him maneuver around difficult people.
AKA, he's looking for an assassin to do his dirty work while being paid a salary.
After 6 years, the champion will be granted their freedom, but if she unsubscribes, she'll stay in the salt mines.
But there is a catch. He's like a headhunter. She doesn't actually have the job yet. She's just up for the job with 23 other participants, each sponsored by a member of the council. And they're all going to live and train in the castle, and then they'll ultimately compete in a duel.
I mean, that side note seems kind of a wild risk to take and not tell the people that already are there, but okay.
Yeah.
The competition, like, thanks for taking my life in your hands. The competition will feature fellow assassins, thieves, warriors, and criminals from across Aurelia.
And Celaena's going to have to undercover boss it because she's too infamous. Like, she loves that too. She's like, I'm just too famous. So she's going to have to go by an alias, which actually isn't going to be that hard considering that after she was captured, people thought she was far older.
So out of everything, that is what really bothers her.
She's like, wait a minute. No one knows that I'm me.
She's a little bit prideful. I'm slaving away in this shithole for a name and a reputation that don't even belong to me anymore.
Dorian promises that if she fights for him, he'll see to it that his father releases her in 5 years.
3 years.
It's 4.
Fine. But if she doesn't win, she'll be sent back to the mines to serve out the remainder of her sentence.
So it's not even actually a choice. Of course she's going to fucking do this.
Yeah.
She would go to Rifthold, to the Gates of Word, into Hell, 2 L's, itself if it meant freedom.
Word is something else you'll recognize from Crescent City.
The Underking tells Ethan and Hypaxia that in his world, the world that he's from, Erd was not a goddess, but a force that governed worlds, a cauldron of life brimming with the language of creation. Erd is what they call her in Midgard, but that's a bastardized version of her true name, dot, 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 Word. Word.
Word. That's all we're going to say about Word for now, but there's a lot more to come.
They leave Rifthold tomorrow morning, so Celaena returns to her room and she's bathed roughly, but still, she's at least clean. And bonus, Chaol took off her shackles before she got into the bath, and she actually got to eat decent food for the first time in a year.
Yeah, but her poor body is so fucked up that she immediately throws it up.
Yeah, I think she even has like a swollen belly.
Yeah, I don't
that's
think
how much she's been starving.
It's already too rich for what she's been given for a year.
She may be the most infamous assassin, but the past year has set her back significantly. She vows to eat and exercise and to get healthy again so she can win the competition.
Chaol finds her on the ground the following morning. Sleeping on a mattress felt too strange after a year, but she basks in the sunlight and feels, for the first time in a long time, hope.
And I think that it's little moments like that, like Chaol's watching her just like put her hand in the sunlight, that it's like, okay, she's a criminal, but she's also just a girl.
I mean, it's amazing that after a year in a slave camp, she still can find things to smile about.
Right. She's cheerful. I mean, she had a bed that she didn't sleep in, clothes or food that she threw up, and then she's going to get clothes.
She loves clothes.
And she plans on buying all of the clothes after she wins the competition and has a salary. But yeah, she's just like giddy over these little things, and it reminds you that this is just an 18-year-old girl.
Yeah, assassin or not. I mean, she's just 18 and she's been through so much. Keep that in mind as you're reading.
Celaena is an 18-year-old girl, and Sarah herself was only 16 when she started this story. So there is some, I don't want to say immaturity, but it is a little.
I mean, like some of it, like just how prideful she is over her reputation. And she's earned a right to be proud of what she's accomplished, but you could just tell it's youth.
Yeah, it's youth.
She'll grow up.
There's not a lot of spice yet, but Celaena, Sarah, us, like we're all growing and evolving as the story continues. Like the characters and Sarah, they were growing up with each other.
I know we've said this before, but honestly, there's so much that's happening. Like, obviously, we love spice, but like, you're so wrapped up in the world and the story growing that it's okay that the spice isn't immediate because there's just so much of interest to absorb. The first step is for them is to leave Endovier, a happy moment, except that Celaena has to walk past all the prisoners who will never leave. Even when they die, they're going to be thrown into a mass grave.
That's so, yeah. So from the beginning, you understand this king is evil.
Yeah.
And it also probably draws a lot from Sarah is Jewish, and she's talked about trips that she's gone on and things that she's learned. And you have to imagine when she's writing a story that involves so much genocide and killing, and that she would be drawing from some of that.
Yeah, probably
like
her
her
own personal experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Family experience.
But Celaena does get her own horse, but her shackles are put back on, and there's a chain that is connecting her with Chaol's saddle.
I think it's also really important for Celaena's character, but also for foreshadowing to see how much she pays attention to the plight of the people around her.
Yes.
She's very aware, just like not only of others' feelings, but what's happening around her and what the bigger significance can be.
Well, and when you'll see that again when she gets to the capital, and everyone's like, it's such a cute little shopping district, everyone's bustling around, but she immediately sees the slaves.
Yeah, she can hear the whip cracking immediately. So the company departs, and by mid-morning they enter Oakwalled Forest.
The woods divide the, quote, civilized countries of the East and the uncharted lands of the West, where the cruel and bloodthirsty descendants of the fallen witch kingdom live.
That's terrifying.
If you believe the legends.
Where, rumor has it, the king will take his armies after he's finished his war against Windland, a kingdom located east of Aurelia across the Great Ocean.
She mentions it kind of casually to Chaol, just hoping to see if he'll confirm or deny. And from the beginning, you're like, I wonder why she cares so much.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder why she would need that information.
Yeah. Chaol is ignoring Celaena, but that doesn't stop her from trying to make conversation. Again, actually, I don't know if she can't help herself with chattering or if she enjoys poking the bear because he's just so grumpy.
Yeah, she's just like question after question. He's like, and
But
she's like grunting.
he finally answers one of her questions, revealing that he's 22, and she in turn tells him that she's 18.
Impressive, right? Chaol's like, crime isn't an accomplishment.
I've accomplished so much by this age.
And he tries to shut down all the questions, which it doesn't stop her. She's like, are you and the crown prince close? And how well born are you?
I appreciate, like, she does also show that her feelings are, she's not just like, she seems less manipulative and more girlish when, like, he says things and she's like, oh, like, very obviously hurt her feelings because he's not going to talk to her.
But then he's like, I'm not answering. And she's like, okay, so are you and Dorian close?
Yeah. So how well born are you? And he's like, well, I'm well enough. And after some pressing, he elaborates. He isn't a lord, but he doesn't have an older brother either, which is weird. He's unmarried and he was named captain of the guard at 20.
And that's all we get for now. We aren't mentioning it every time also because it's literally at least once a page, but Celaena thinks about running or strangling Chaol constantly. Like she's always thinking about like, should I grab that and stab him?
I mean,
or should I do this?
Yeah, well, she's been trained to constantly notice every detail around her as an assassin. But I also wonder if part of it helps keep her calm because it's like, okay, I'm not in dire straits yet. I could get out this way. I could save myself this way. So
yeah, it's a way of not being helpless of like, I'll let him lead me, but if I really want to, I can wrap this around his neck and strangle him.
She's always considering all possible scenarios if shit hits the fan.
I do not. I need to be more aware
I need to be observant. And also just like aware of my strengths and weaknesses. She's surrounded by guards, and even when her chains are unlocked for her to eat, they're clamped onto her ankles instead.
No, I said
cankles.
cankles.
That girl has not eaten in a year.
Cankles. That's us.
Bless her heart.
Remember we went on an international trip the first
time we went to Germany,
and my ankles blew up.
So did mine. But Caitlin, bless your heart, you came back and it was like the biggest joke about your cankles.
Bad. Well, now I have those compression socks.
Yeah,
but it was
just being on a plane so long.
Concerning.
I didn't know such little ankles could get so big.
While they eat, Celaena's taking in her, like we talked about, she's always taking in her surroundings. She's always looking around. The crown prince may be sitting with that thick fuck Perrington, but they aren't getting friendship bracelets anytime soon. Like there's no love lost between them.
She also looks around Oakwald Forest. The part they're in is untouched, and it echoes the remnants of the power that had once given the trees unnatural beauty.
And I think that this is our first reference to the Fae.
It's also the first time Celaena thinks of Arobin Hamel, her mentor and the king of the assassins. Like we said earlier, he found her on the banks of a frozen river 10 years ago, and he brought her to his keep on the border between Adarlan and Terrasen.
And she was only 8, but he'd never let her return home to Terrasen. It was either train with him or he would have handed her over to those that wanted to kill her. Or worse, like I can't even imagine what would happen to an 8-year-old orphan girl. So she didn't have much of a choice. She's never really, if you think about it, her entire life, she really hasn't had much of a choice.
But as the story goes on, I appreciate her mentioning this because every time Chaol is like, but you're a criminal.
What did you want me to do?
She was taken at 8. What do you want her to do? People have to survive. It's a little bit like his knowledge needs to be expanded to have a better understanding. Like I didn't just choose to do this because it was fun. He has a very
limited worldview, and everything is black and white to Chaol. It is, you are either a good guy or a bad guy. But it's just not, it's not that simple.
Yeah, it's good for him to get some exposure, but like every time he says it, it's like so frustrating because you're like, come on.
Yeah.
But so she's changed her name after everything that's happened.
Meaning Celaena is not her real name.
That's an interesting question to just hold on to for later. She was running from her fate, but that's all we know for now.
We just know the bitch has secrets. Lots of secrets.
As does this forest. Brannan's Forest.
Brannan's Forest. That is another name everyone who has been with us since Crescent City will remember via a certain character's son's name. And I won't say which character because that would be like a huge spoiler.
Yes.
If you haven't read it. But yeah, it's like there's so many moments of just like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's pointing at the TV that you're like, oh.
Yeah, he's like whistling and like.
Even though she started writing this in 2002.
Yeah.
And then House of Flame and Shadow came out this year.
Some of these are not necessarily big spoilers yet, but like just hearing the name referenced in multiple series that she's written, it's just something to hold on to. So the forest used to be full of fairies, one soldier says, but they're gone now, along with those, quote, damn wretched fae that we got rid of.
And Celaena is triggered. She's like, King Brandon was Fae and Oakwald is still his, you incel. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the trees remember him, which made me think about like Treebeard.
Yeah, but also that's a lot of interesting knowledge that she has.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, this forest was cloaked in magic, and just because magic is currently it's disappeared does not mean that all of the magic that existed before that has disappeared.
I mean, it's an interesting point for her character that she felt the need to in some way defend the forest.
Mm-hmm.
She's showing history that not everybody has, like knowledge of a history.
Mm-hmm.
And Chaol, to his credit, is listening very closely, but
I
she
would
stops.
be too, though, because I'd be like, fairies.
Like if somebody said something, I'm like, why would you know that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, he doesn't know her yet.
He does notice things. Like for all of his faults, he is observant.
Yes. So like he may have some what's the word? Like prejudice and assumptions that he makes, but he's not ignoring what's happening around him either. He's paying attention. But, you know, as soon as she realizes he's paying attention, she stops talking.
She's like, yeah, but what would I know?
Weird.
So from that little interaction, we know that there were once fae and fairies. Fairies are small creatures like gnomes, sprites, nymphs that live in wild places such as forest and the woods. They're the smaller cousins to the human-like fae who rule over them. So the fae are like our size.
Yeah. So fae and fairies. The fae were the OG inhabitants. Sorry, that got real country. The fae were the OG inhabitants and settlers of the continent.
Until the king, Christopher Columbused them out of there, hunting down the fairies and fae, outlawing all of it. Magic, fae, fairies, removing any trace so thoroughly that even those who had magic in their blood almost believed it had never really existed. Like, he is gaslighting the entire world.
Yeah, but somehow, like, all of this gaslighting, it worked because the magic really did disappear.
Well, and he's outlawing people. Like, imagine they outlawed hillbillies with side hair parts and blue eyeshadow. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
What would you do?
I mean, like, the most I could do is change my look, because he didn't just ban them using magic. He banned them.
He banned them.
People. Like, you are not allowed to be here. I mean, he banned magic, and literally within like a month, the magic disappeared.
It's very sus that I guess that he's keeping everyone so poor and uneducated, but it's like, I mean, how did you do that without magic? How did you get rid of magic?
Yeah, they should be asking questions, because what happened? But like, nobody has any idea.
And he did it. He says he's doing it like for the gods.
Yeah, I mean, he claimed that magic was an affront to the capital G goddess and her gods.
And we don't really get a firm explanation of like the gods and goddesses yet, but we will later on. I think much later on.
Mm-hmm.
But he burned seers and healers, books full of ancient and irreplaceable knowledge.
Like the Library of Parthos. So keep in mind a few of those titles.
Some of those book titles. Many of the magic users who weren't burned ended up in the salt mines. So
it reminds me a lot of
like criminals.
Oh my gosh, I just drew a blank. Like Massachusetts and the witch burnings.
Yes.
What is the city?
Salem?
Salem, thank you. The witch trials. Because it was very much like, I think you're probably a magic user, even though I can't prove it. So we'll send you there, the mines anyway.
God, and a lot of that was just like, I mean, we
everybody.
are women on the wrong side of 35. We are not married with, like, we would have been.
Don't ask me any questions if I sound slightly intelligent or know an herbal way to fix it. I'm probably a witch.
I know. We would pull out like Neosporin. It's like, witch.
She seems to know too much. We're learning a lot here, though. The history of the forest, magic being banned, the genocide of the Fae, and now we have some religion to add to all this lore.
And some mystery. We know Celaena was running from something, not just a situation, but she was running from her fate. We just don't know what that fate was. And that she had gifts that she's now lost. The memories of those gifts still haunt her. And we're inside of her mind, and we're like, what are you talking about? Like, what gifts?
Yeah, share with the class.
What was your fate?
Yeah, what do you mean?
What was your name?
What do you mean? She's actually kind of glad that they've disappeared, though. They were too dangerous for any sane person to wield.
She is good at disassociating and like pushing emotions and feelings down, you know?
Yeah, and they could have very well destroyed her by this point. That night, Celaena doesn't dream, but when she awakes, small white flowers lay at the foot of her cot and baby-sized footprints lead in and out of her tent.
It's that fully conscious baby that wanted to go to the Four Seasons Orlando.
Me. Or it's fairies.
But why would fairies leave this random assassin what looks like offerings?
I mean, if nothing else, she did stand up for them in the forest. So that gives more questions like, who or what is listening?
But she she gets rid of it. She's like, oh shit, people are going to see these little baby footprints.
Yeah, like nobody needs to know. They travel, but she does keep the flowers. Mm-hmm. They travel for the next 2 weeks. The rainy cold, so miserable that Celaena considers throwing herself into a ravine. That's so dramatic. That's so high school. Just to drag Chaol with her.
I forgot how funny this book was. Like moments like that make me laugh, but also how many exclamation marks SJM, like young SJM use. Like everything is like the nerve.
I mean, she's just so like hype. I'm like, yeah, girl. One day, as the weather is finally starting to clear up, Dorian pulls out of line and tells Chaol to come see the view. Bring that one, I suppose.
Atop the hill, Celaena sees the glass castle of Rifthold. And if this isn't big fairy tale vibes, I don't know what is.
Yeah, seriously. Shimmering crystalline towers and bridges, chambers, ballrooms, endless hallways, all built above the original stone castle.
It sounds beautiful, but it reminds me, we've talked about the Moonstone Palace in Akatar, how I don't need people, because that's like open air bathing. I don't need people seeing how the sausage is made. Like, how are you ever having privacy if it's made of glass?
Are you the sausage in this?
I'm the sausage.
Also, are the floors glass? Am I looking up your skirt every time I walk under? Like, so many questions.
I mean, we don't know of anybody being able to fly in this world yet.
Yeah, not that we know of.
But I don't, so like Cassian's not going to fly by during an everything shower while I'm like fighting for my life in the shower. Because I will almost pass out during an everything shower.
I mean, it is so much work. Nobody needs to see how I look when I'm bent over trying to shave my legs and everything else.
They can look up to your everything shower. They can look over to your everything shower. They can look from the outside.
Like a little bit of like privacy would be.
Do you remember that movie, The Glass House, with Lee? You know what I'm
talking about? Oh, yeah. Was it Leilani? No. I know who you're talking about. I can see her face.
Yeah.
I can't think the actress's name. She was really big in like the 90s movies. Mm-hmm. Okay. So anyway.
Sorry. But yeah. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah.
That was a weird movie.
That was a weird throwback. This isn't the first time that Celaena's seeing the castle. That was 8 years ago. But on that day, she'd been distracted by a man that she'd killed 3 days prior. So we get a little bit of information about the first time she came to Rifthold.
Well, and it's, if you do the math, if she's 18 now and this was 8 years ago, that means that Arobin had her killing by the age of 10.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It's wild.
So it really, again, what we were talking about with Chaol being so fucking judgy is, are you going to blame a 10-year-old?
This is a child that's fighting to survive. Like, you were being pampered somewhere. Chill out.
That is another good point. Is he now has his problems.
He can have his lofty morals while he's pampered by his family and his
so
title.
Right. Tell him.
I'll fight with Chaol later. Just give me time. Chaol and Dorian muse what the king will think of Celaena.
He'll be fine until she opens her mouth. Then I'll regret wasting the past 2 months tracking her down.
Interesting.
Like, why are you so obsessed with me?
Celaena admits to Chaol she isn't exactly sure how she was captured, but she thinks it was a fellow assassin.
Could have been one, could have been many. When you're at the top, there's always going to be people that want to take your place and your jobs.
She may not know for sure, but she has some suspicions. The one who seems the most likely is a truth that she's just not ready to face. Not now and not ever. And it does seem to humanize her a little bit for Chaol, because he starts asking about the salt mines. Thanks for asking. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. What do you think it was? You saw me when you came to get me. The overseers were instructed to treat her with special care, like rubbing salt she mined into her own wounds. That is so cruel. Everything about that's so brutal. The only reason that she's still here, that she's still alive, is the kindness of a few prisoners from Elway. That's the kingdom that we mentioned earlier. It's one of the few that's still fighting Adarlan's rule. Woken by a nightmare that night, Celaena looks at the illuminated castle, which
objectively would be very pretty.
Yes, but it also seems like insane the way they describe just how many like turrets and like
It's very fairy tale.
yeah. There's something greenish about it and it seems to pulse, which just seems like every like bad Disney movie, everybody's
Right.
green when it's bad.
Exactly. We talked about that during our Crescent City deep dive, but it's even more relevant in this book with its Cinderella and fairy tale inspiration. Green light and flames typically accompany the villains in Disney movies.
Yeah, and that's not even the first time she references like green flames or green lighting. Think Scar when he's singing his banger Be Prepared.
Be Prepared. That's such a good song.
I immediately knew exactly what you're talking about. Ursula, Maleficent, Mother Gothel, Hades when he's falling into the pit.
It's not just Disney either. Traditionally, and I guess culturally, I think I just had a stroke. Traditionally and culturally, green is associated with magic. So think of how you make green flame with copper. So it's a little alchemy too.
Yeah.
Most of all, it's just unnatural. Like there's like that what am I trying to say? The instincts, the like part of you that's keeps you from falling out of a tree, like when you jerk yourself awake, like just that part of yourself.
Something of your subconscious notices.
Yeah, like it recognizes this is not natural. So I'm sure there's some like psychology behind it too.
Yeah, we get a little bit of foreshadowing here.
Celaena she's not going to get involved in the rise and the fall of kingdoms. Magic is banned, Fae are dead or banished. She isn't fated for anything, not anymore. Like, I'm here, I'm going to win this competition. I don't give a shit about anything else.
But she keeps giving these little hints. And I'm like, what do you mean not anymore?
What do you mean?
Like there's so many lingering questions and she's the one giving them to us. Our first POV switch is to Dorian, who's watching Celaena as she stares at the castle.
I would say Dorian is the first to really see beyond her swagger. Like he notices the way that her eyes sparkle when she sees something lovely in the landscape. He notices how beautiful she is.
He tries to ignore it. I mean, she's just an assassin with a pretty face. I mean, she's 18. She's a baby. But he can't forget the lovely girl gazing at the stars and the stars who gazed back.
It's so fairy tale and dreamy, but then it also is very like ACOTAR with the stars and...
Yeah, just that early in the story, mentioning the stars gazing back gives you some foreshadowing.
And Dorian is definitely the Prince Charming of this story. My chicken cutlets have slid off. Can you see? Okay. I'm sweating and the cutlets are sliding right off. Okay.
You guys feel like you're here with us?
They pass through the alabaster walls of Rifthold, the alabaster walls. Celaena is unchained now and she's riding with Chaol, but it is not sexy.
I mean, she's like in his lap. I was like, that's a big move. Women are also like, who the fuck is this woman riding in Dorian's company?
Dorian?
Like she's literally sitting on somebody else's lap and they're like, who is that with Dorian?
Who is that? Dorian is popular with the people, but he's most popular with the ladies.
I mean, Dorian is hamming it up any chance he gets.
Oh, I know. I just picture him like pageant waving as he goes by.
Yes, it's me. I have returned. So back to the map, you can see the Avery River flows through Rifthold with the harbor opening into the Great Ocean. The harbor contains warships, merchant vessels, and fishing boats.
Like we said earlier, it's a bustling port with a shopping district, but Celaena is the one who notices the chained slaves working the docks. Many prisoners of war and people caught or accused of trying to practice magic, they're all being held there.
Yeah. I mean, and I feel for her in this moment because she wants to do something. She's not in a position to yet, but she wants to. And she wants them to know that she's not with these people. You know, she wants them to know that 2 years ago, she freed almost 200 slaves from the pirate lord. She doesn't agree to this.
Oh, and we'll get some backstory on that story with the pirate lord. It's in Assassin's Blade, but then the pirate lord will also be in Empire of Storms. He'll kind of play a part in that.
Yeah, so that'll come back.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of similarities in the description of Rifthold, its iron gates, its arches, and the glass castle to the Eternal City and the Crystal Palace. And we'll try to point those out as we get to them, but there's a lot of, we know that some of the Fae in Crescent City potentially came from this world.
Yeah.
And have seen this castle.
I didn't even think about the glass arches. Yeah. Like it came from somebody's memory of being there maybe.
Right. And Meryl did say that these worlds are stacked on top of each other. Like I don't have a brain big enough to really think about that.
I
Like,
need somebody to draw a visual of what this
I get like
means.
stuck on anything that has to do with time loops or like parallel dimensions or whatever, but I don't know. I don't know how Sarah is going to eventually tie all this together.
I can't wait. I'm very excited to read it.
Well, hopefully it'll be through that Twilight of the Gods, the
Or
other
the next
series.
ACOTAR whenever it's coming.
I know. I don't know
Somebody
if I
help
want the
us.
next ACOTAR to be that big.
Maybe the next Crescent City.
Right.
I don't know.
want it to be more, I want some spice. I want I don't know.
There's
I don't know what I
There's
want
a
the
lot
next
to pack
ACOTAR to
in
be.
there. You're right. So this castle in Rifthold has 600 rooms, military and servants' quarters, 3 gardens, a game park, and 2 stables.
While overlooking slaves and slums. Like, that's just the perfect representation
Like
of the king.
It's so stark, the wealth next to the abuse and the poor. Celaena is happy to hear her rooms are located in the old stone castle portion, not the newer build with only glass keeping her from death.
Well, and there isn't much time to settle once she actually gets in there because the competition begins tomorrow. It just, couldn't you have come to get me earlier so I could have been training and like eating, sleeping in a bed?
Searching for her for a little while, but still. Chaol shows her to her chambers, which include a bedroom with attached bathing chamber, a dressing room, a small dining room, a gaming room, a music room, and a balcony overlooking the garden. I mean, that's impressive. That's
very impressive. Dorian's taking care of her.
Thank you. And there's 9 guards that are watching her.
And are they watching me and they can see into the room?
No, because we're not in the glass castle anymore.
Oh, you're right. Stone.
Thank God.
Thank God. She can take her everything showers. There's also a giant tapestry along one wall. And she does note that something seems off with the dimensions of the room because, like we said, she pays attention, but I would not know that.
Interesting. There are no weapons, of course, but she finds a few hairpins and binds them together with string for a shank.
It's the best she could do.
Hey, she did something.
She said, I'm going to make it work.
I wouldn't have even thought of that.
A tailor arrives because she's getting new fits for her time at the castle. And after 2 hours of pampering, she's grinning at herself in the mirror.
I look spectacular.
She's nothing if not confident. And we get a little more fashion in this series compared to Crescent City. That was something I loved in ACOTAR. Crescent City, Bryce was like dressing like me in 2007. Just like tight dresses and long necklaces.
I mean, there's just so much more detail. I love the descriptions of these dresses.
I do too.
We meet her personal servant, Philippa Spindlehead, which is a fairy tale name if I've ever heard one.
That is a fairy tale name.
Spindlehead, come on.
And she's basically the Alice of the story, but she's a lot sassier and nosier.
I appreciate that she doesn't cower. She's like, nah, I don't care.
Well, Alice didn't really trust Feyre in the beginning. She was kind of standoffish.
Yeah.
And not this one.
Philippa is she's not taking any guff. And she's one of the very few who know that who Celaena really is.
The other champions have guards outside of their rooms too, but people will probably just think Celaena is another one of the prince's lady friends.
Great. We switch to Dorian's POV as he's watching his father on the glass throne.
Either glass thrones are like the shiplap of fantasy worlds, or that's another similarity with Crescent City.
The Asteri sat on those crystal thrones, which they used to feed on first and second light. It's
also very like the throne, the glass castle. It's very glass slipper if we're going back to Cinderella.
Yeah.
And it's a great visual. Like I love picturing this world. Like it's pretty, it's cool, it's interesting.
It's just so fairy tale because nobody sits on glass anything in our world,
Well, you have those bar stools.
I do, but they're like hard plastic.
I can see through them.
This is my new throne. Dorian doesn't look like his father, but his younger brother, Holland, takes after the king with his broad frame and round face.
And Dorian is pretty. He has those gorgeous sapphire eyes.
Which not even his mother has?
Holland, BTW, is a 10-year-old spoiled little brat, and he beats up servants and was shipped off to school because of the scandal. You don't need to remember anything about him right now because I don't even think he comes into play until the second book. I think he's gone this entire book.
He's just not great. Keep that in mind, I guess.
He's a little piece of shit.
Yeah.
The king asks Dorian if Celaena has arrived, and we learn that Dorian sought the assassin out not just because he wanted to win the competition, but it was a way to get away from his father for as long as possible.
We also learn the name of Duke Perrington's champion, Cain.
The king and queen, who we'll meet later, are pressuring Dorian to marry a proper woman. So that's like every fairy book story.
But when Dorian is king, he won't declare control over Terrasen through Thrin.
You're
I
doing
wrote it.
so well.
Dorian, once he's king, he won't declare control over Terrasen through thin claims of inheritance. It's obvious that Dorian doesn't just differ from his father in looks, but they have very different approaches to ruling.
Dorian continues to sass the king until he gets those hands. Like, he
Uh-oh.
will push it to the limit.
Yeah, that's real brave, Dorian.
Meanwhile, Celaena is getting the grand tour from a grumpy Chaol. So, like, she's excited. She's like, oh my God, like, I have all these rooms and, like,
Show me
look at this.
around.
And he's like, ugh.
It's Celaena, so of course she's using every moment to plot a dozen escape routes from her room.
She refuses to enter the glass addition because only an idiot would walk in a house made of glass. And she has a good point.
I support that. She asks Chaol about the library as they pass Queen Georgina's court, but they're interrupted by an awful noise.
Bells from the clock tower, which is made of inky black stone with gargoyles, but they are not sexy gargoyles like the other book. And she swears that they move. They're like on each of the 4 clock faces, and she thinks that like their eyes are following her.
Oh, that's so creepy.
Very creepy. She says that it looks like something you would see before the gates of the word, not in the garden.
Well, yeah.
It's just very out of place.
If nothing else, a big monstrosity of black stone doesn't feel like what you would normally see.
With a glass castle.
Yeah, in a garden. We talked about the connections between word and Erd, but gates were significant in Crescent City too.
The king had the clock tower built around Dorian's birth, so that would have been around 20 years ago.
Keep that timeline in mind.
Celaena notices a tile on the paved pathway, a circle with a vertical line through the middle, both ends of the line hooked, one up and one down.
And the gargoyle seems to be pointing at it.
Like, but Chaol has no idea what it is. It kind of is surprising. I guess if you've grown up around it, you don't notice things like that. But she immediately, like we've said, she's trained to notice things. So she's looking around. She's like, what's that? What's that? He's pointing at that.
There's just so many things they don't question.
Yeah.
You know?
But once they go back inside, they find the library.
There's 20-foot oak doors carved with 4-legged dragons, not wyverns.
I started wondering, and I meant to look this up, how many legs the scaled beast they're like carved in the hewn city, how many they had. I don't know if it says. I think it just says that they're like writhing, like.
Oh my gosh, off the top of my head, I feel like I visualized it with 4, but now I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll have to look that back up.
They haven't been described super well,
yeah,
other than just like a tangle of beasts.
Yeah, I have to look that up. There's also what Lanthus showed Nesta.
And there's the Daglan hounds, which that could all be the same thing, but I don't know.
And Rhys's beast form.
I have a lot of questions about Rhys's beast form. I know that his beast form has wings. Yeah. I mean, that could be dragon-like.
There's something, yeah. And a connection to this series we haven't gotten to yet. Celaena and Chaol step inside the library, and Celaena marvels at the millions of books inside.
And there are even more books in the second library, in the catacombs and tunnels, if the legends are to be believed. So there's so many things that are not even that far removed from current time, that they've just been gaslit to forget everything.
They're like, how much was destroyed in all these other kingdoms, and it's just like there are millions here and another, like, God, like it's like Hitler hoarding all the knowledge and the art.
No, there's a lot of parallels, but it also there being catacombs and tunnels, it did remind me of where the oracles were kept underneath the Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
It's like it's a similar layout, it feels.
Yeah. Like us, Celaena loves to read. When she was young, she visited the Great Library of Orinth in Terrasen, which is said to have been twice as big with all the knowledge of the world.
Celaena hasn't been back and wonders how many of those irreplaceable books were ordered destroyed by the king, but she hopes the master scholars were able to smuggle some to safety.
Oh, God, I hope so. Just like Jessica did for the Library of Parthos.
There aren't guards in the library because they're, quote, no use, according to Chaol, but she counters that libraries are full of ideas, perhaps the most dangerous and powerful of all weapons.
I feel like that was in another book, too, where they said something similar.
Well, I think that it's like a recurring theme for Sarah, that libraries, that knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And clearly the king understands that. That's why he's having all this knowledge burned and stolen.
Yeah, but the losers in Rifthold aren't into reading.
Losers!
Despite hoarding all the books.
More for Celaena to read, but first she's going to have to get permission from the king or the prince to even check a book out.
Which she asks for when she returns to her room, receiving a reply a half hour later when a servant brings her a stack of books.
Dorian's like, I command you to read these first so that we can talk about them.
Oh, okay. The following morning, she's sitting on her balcony watching 3 women, one of whom is complaining she should have worn a white dress because Dorian likes white.
The woman seems confident it won't take long for Dorian to ask for a private audience with her, as long as Perrington's courting doesn't interfere.
Ugh, they're also gossiping about the harlot the prince brought to Rifthold.
The woman comments that she's like rubbing her temples and talking about how she needs her pipe. I would be like, are they doing crack here?
Like, what? That's a lot. Okay.
And then Celaena launches a flower pot at her.
Hilarious. The prince's harlot then dresses in the finest gown she can find with sea foam white lace, powder green silk, and green beads and whorls and vines.
Whorls. She loves that word.
It sounds so pretty, too.
It sounds so pretty. Like, I actually think that would be a really good color for us.
Yes, both of us.
We kind of look alike today. We didn't mean to, but we're both wearing like springy blue dresses.
We really support the blue today.
We would look so good in the spring court.
So true.
It's speaking of, we like every weekend I try to do a fuck, marry, kill. And this past weekend I did Tamlin, Dane, and Chaol. And everyone killed Tamlin, which I understand, but like I thought we were gonna hate fuck him. And then like I guess it should be combined, fuck and kill. I mean, the order matters.
To be honest, I chose to fuck Tamlin because that was never an issue for Pharaoh. So I'm like, that would be the easiest one.
I don't think that Dane, because Dane was chosen to fuck, and then we were marrying Chaol.
Yeah.
I don't think Dane would be that exciting.
No. I mean, I still haven't read the second.
What is wrong with you? Are you busy?
No, I want to read it when the third one comes out.
Okay, so you'll read it next year?
I hate cliffhangers, and I'll also forget it by then, so I have to read it all together.
I'm going to have to reread it because it is a cliffhanger.
But so the last I know of Dane, he's a bitch, and I'd happily kill him. So.
He's less of a bitch, but I also don't think he would be a literal beast in bed like Tamlin. So
I mean, she has multiple orgasms with Tamlin, so we don't have to like him.
Dane's not giving anyone multiple orgasms. Sorry.
Thank you for pointing this out.
But yes, she is wearing this beautiful dress, but then she also has her shank tucked into her bodice.
You can never be too prepared.
She's Celaena.
She's preening in front of the mirror, wondering if it's a good thing everyone thinks she's just another one of the prince's lovers, when the doors burst open and Chaol stumps in like the Kool-Aid man.
He drags her through the halls to see the king, which she didn't know about, hence her OOTD. She's just wearing a dress, and now she's about to go meet all the other champions, and she's thrown very off balance. Like, she didn't know about the meeting. They're late. That creepy clock tower is chiming, which would definitely throw me off. And they're entering the glass addition of the castle.
Ooh, which just makes her anxious all around because it's so unsafe and unstable.
Well, it just seems like, why are we always, can we get like an itinerary or a schedule? Why are we always so far behind?
Yeah. Also, my OCD wants to know what's going on so I can be prepared. And I cannot be prepared when you just yank me out of there out of nowhere.
We just talked about his banger of a song, Be Prepared.
Yeah. God. Chaol rapid fire gives her rules like bow low, don't look in the king in the eye, answer everything with your majesty.
Most of all, no sass.
Fine.
But then she's already off balance and Chaol hits her with her, you look rather pretty today. And then they go into the throne room and she's like,
from the grump? What just happened here?
And the fireplace, by the way, it is burning with a greenish flame.
I mean, I feel like, does nobody else see this? Is this weird? Okay.
That's why you need social media. She would be able to like tweet it.
If nothing else, I need to Google this. Did anybody else see the green flame?
Green flame.
Dorian is shook when he sees his champion looking like a snack.
Like we mentioned before, the king and Dorian look nothing alike. Dorian is pretty and the king is broad and he's like bursting out of his Baby Gap t-shirt. It reminded me of like Fat Guy in a Little Coat from Tommy Boy.
Perfect. Makes it easier to tolerate the king. The king completed his OOTD with his sword, Nothung.
In Norse mythology, Graham is also known as, is that how you say it, Nothung?
I assume so.
In Norse mythology, Graham, also known as Nothung, is the sword that Sigurd used to kill the dragon Fafnir. In one of the stories, Sigurd brings Regin, the two halves of Graham, his father's sword. So, like, put the sword back together.
That reminds me of Narsil, the sword that was broken in Lord of the Rings.
Right, that sword, and then there's a lot of Song of Ice and Fire parallels with the stories that involve that sword. But ultimately, I think Sarah's just letting us know that the king is not hung.
She just forgot to put the space in there. The king addresses the audience of the King's Council, their champions and guards.
There are 24 champions competing in the tournament, 23 men and Celaena. Three of these men are actually in chains. Like, that's the level of danger that we're dealing with, like the level of criminal that we're
And
dealing
meanwhile,
with.
she's standing there in a dress.
I know. It's perfect for the meet cute with the moderately handsome competitor. We don't get a full breakdown of the competitors yet, but we do get descriptions of a few. There's the guy that, like, you'd hesitate, but you would swipe right on. And then there's Samwise Gamgee, who's just a giant gym bro wearing sleeveless armor, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I mean, he's also pretty cute, but he has roid rage, and like the King's sword is probably also not hung.
Not hung. He's Duke Perrington's champion, like a fucking course. So this is Kane that we're talking about.
Gross. The king complains. Too excited. The king explains the tournament. Over the next 13 weeks, the competitors will live and train at the castle and be tested once a week, during which one competitor will be eliminated.
And Celaena, is like that meme of a woman with like the numbers circling. She's like 24 competitors, 13 weeks.
Somehow the math isn't mathing. LOL, some of you will die, the king says.
LOL. The week after Yulemas, so they're like Christmas.
Is it Yulemas or Eulemus?
Well, it's like a Yule log.
Yeah. Now I'm like, am I crazy? In my head, I've been saying Eulemus.
That's actually insane. Yulemas?
All right, Chaol.
Okay. You're right. The 4 remaining champions will face each other in a duel to become the king's champion at Yule.
Now I need to re-listen to the audiobook. So
if you're right, I'm gonna sound so stupid, but that can't be right.
Like, I'm having a really good day with Harbingers. Like, it probably is Yulemas.
Just a series of small strokes.
Yeah. Everyone in court is aware that some sort of contest is going on, but the specifics are kept on the down low. So, like, they have all these important, like, lords and ladies that they're letting these criminals be so close to, and they're not warning them.
Well, and they're like out and about. Like, Celaena has the most oversight.
I mean, like, the most, like, insane are still in chains, but that's 3 out of 24.
Well, and what doesn't make sense to me is, like, yeah, she's the most notorious assassin, but she kills people she's paid to kill.
But also, if you know
these are just criminals.
Well, you also know she came from the King of Assassins. That's a guild. She's doing what she's paid to do. She's not like
she was
crazy and like, I love blood. Like, that's not the same thing as some of the weirdos that have like nicknames like Eye Eater.
Well, and I think the Eye Eater.
Come on.
I think a lot of it also goes back to Chaol. Like, he's taking it so much more seriously than everybody else.
Yes.
He's a very serious boy.
That is so true.
Just like a man who is not hung, the king delights in Celaena's obvious discomfort and rage. Like, he's looking right at her.
Yeah. Well, at least she does well not to look him in the eye. She follows what she's directed to.
She does. Like, when she needs to, she can. Well, I mean, that's part of being an assassin. Like, she can be who she needs to be.
Well, and we see a lot of spirit from her for somebody that has been taught.
More spirit, more passion,
more footwork. She just, like, she at least knows how to behave in this situation.
She's like a chameleon. Like, she can blend in.
But then later we see her all mad that she was in a dress instead of fighting form. And they're
it's like, you made me look fucking stupid. Now nobody's going to take me seriously.
But she also, like, for somebody that's so cunning, she hasn't had any forethought about the way she should approach character she's playing for this, which is interesting.
Well, I mean, she has to have like split personality issues, because think about all these different characters she's having to play.
Yeah, but also, I don't know, I think it just shows her youth that she's like, everybody needs to know how good I am at this. I hate having to downplay it. But, as we've just learned, since the king won't be here, at least he's not going to be there for this. He's departing next week, and he won't be back till Yulemas.
Good for them, but it's bad for wherever he's going.
Yeah, what are you doing that's going to take you away for so long?
I mean, throughout this entire series, this bitch has secret plans. He's up to something.
Yeah. Anyway, I was about to give a little spoiler there. Dorian has little microaggressions toward his father, like leaving the meeting early, but he waits for Chaol and Celaena down the hall.
Because he had nowhere to go. He's just defiant in small ways he knows that he can get away with. So, like, he'll sass every once in a while. He'll leave a meeting early, but he's not actually, like, leading a resistance or fighting back.
But also, if he's, like, constantly played this character, he has to kind of keep it up.
Mm-hmm.
The king kind of expects him to be a bit of a brat.
Right.
Celaena gets it. She grew up with a strict father figure, Arabin, the mentor.
And we're going to get into how gross that is, that being her father
fact
figure.
That's a father figure, the mentor and king of the assassins that we mentioned earlier.
We will get into that dysfunction later because it is very dysfunctional.
Yeah, like Philippa said, very few know Celaena's real identity, and they plan on keeping it that way by having her go by the name Lillian Gordana.
Just like another identity to add to, what was that movie?
With a backstory.
Like, yeah, you have to remember all of this. It kind of like the book I'm reading or listening to right now, A Court This Cruel and Lovely. She has a bunch of different like personalities and identities she has to cycle through. And I'm like, I can't remember.
Like, would the original identity get lost somewhere there?
Yeah.
That's difficult to like maintain. Mm-hmm. Lillian, quote, Lillian's mother is dead and her father is a wealthy merchant from Belhaven. She's a jewel thief like that Dorian met when she tried to rob him. And when her father discovered her secret, she was moved to a town near Endovier. That's the backstory.
Exactly, which explains Dorian's recent travel. So it's like flimsy, but because if you're the crown prince and you know that there's going to be a duel, that there's going to be 13 weeks of all these challenges, you're just going to pick this jewel thief?
Yeah, well, because like people are going to want to know why she's around, even like the other competitors. But it also, a jewel thief is easier to tolerate than like, oh, she's an assassin. Trying to keep from putting a target on her back immediately.
That makes sense. If I heard that story, I'd be like,
Yeah, but again, going from jewel thief to assassin feels weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the threesome of our hearts, because I would absolutely watch the three of them. They're interrupted by Lady Kaltain. Is that Kaltain?
Yeah, Kaltain.
Rompier. That simp who Celaena threw a flower pot at earlier.
I mean, Dorian, to his credit, is annoyed by Kaltain, who is a total pick-me.
She is not a girl's girl.
No. Chaol walks Celaena to her room, and we're beginning to see his internal war of trying to reconcile this beautiful, amusing woman with Adarlan's assassin.
And that's something he's going to wrestle with the entire series. Like he has, like we said, he wants to put everyone in a box of like good guy, bad guy. And the more he gets to know her, the more he's around her, he doesn't know how to feel about her.
You can see Chaol's growth, but it's definitely annoying to watch him struggle. You're like, good grief.
Grow up.
But for now, he keeps a solid line between the two of them, and he refuses her invitation for lunch.
And that's where we'll pick up next week with the first day of the competition.
We'll cover chapters 11 through 20, and don't forget to check our House of the Dragon episodes every Sunday.
And if you haven't already done so, our completed Crescent City deep dive covering all 3 books is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. I'm so excited about this. Keep listening.
Yay!